नमस्कार सबैजनालाई अहिलेसम्म पडकास्ट सुनेर मन पराइदिएकोमा धेरै धेरै धन्यवाद भन्न चाहन्छु। मैले युट्युबको स्ट्याटिस्टिक्स हेर्दा चाहिँ 95%ले त सब्स्क्राइब नै गर्नुभएको रहेनछ। प्लिज सब्स्क्राइब गरिदिनु होला। आजको पडकास्ट कुराकानी चाहिँ सबै अङ्ग्रेजीमा रहेको छ। आजको गेस्ट रन पसौडाजीले नेपाली ओमाहा कम्युनिटीलाई सुरुदेखि नै धेरै धेरै हेल्प गर्नुभएको छ। उहाँले बेलिभ्यू युनिभर्सिटीको डिरेक्टर भएर काम गर्नुभएको रहेछ अनि त्यही काम गर्ने सिलसिलामा चाहिँ नेपालीहरूलाई अनि अरू इन्टरनेसनल स्टुडेन्टहरूलाई पनि धेरै धेरै सहयोगहरू गर्नुभएको रहेछ। अनि त्यही कुराकानीहरू समेटेर मैले आज उहाँको बाल्यकाल अनि युवा हुँदाखेरिको कुराहरू अनि त्यसपछि युनिभर्सिटीको डिरेक्टर भएर इन्टरनेसनल स्टुडेन्ट अफिसमा काम गरेर कसरी हेल्प गर्नुभयो, के हेल्प गर्नुभयो आदि इत्यादिका कुराहरू समेटेर यो पडकास्ट लिएर आएको छु। यही कुराकानी गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ सागर श्रेष्ठ दाईको लिडरसिपमा बेलिभ्यू युनिभर्सिटी नेपाली अलमनाई कम्युनिटीले पैसा रेज गरेर रनजीको घर चाहिँ माइनर रेनोभेसन क्लिनअप एसेक्ट्राहरू पनि गरेको थाहा पाएँ मैले। अनि त्यो सुन्दा धेरै धेरै खुसी लाग्यो। अनि उहाँसँगको कुराकानी चाहिँ सबै चाहिँ रेशम दाईले कोअर्डिनेट गर्नुभएकोमा पनि रेशम दाईलाई धेरै धेरै धन्यवाद भन्न चाहन्छु। त्यसै गरी आजको पडकास्ट चाहिँ रनजीको घरमै गएर मैले रेकर्ड गरेकोले अलि कता कता लाइटिङ अनि साउन्ड पनि कहिले सर्को सुनिने कहिले मधुरो सुनिने भएको छ। मैले चाहिँ त्यो सबै मिलाउन चाहिँ प्रयास गरेँ, तर कता कता चाहिँ अलिअलि त्रुटिहरू अझै पनि छ। तपाईहरूले अरू पडकास्टहरू जस्तै यो पडकास्ट पनि सुनेर मन पराइदिनुहुन्छ भन्ने आशा गर्दछु। Thank you for taking your time out of your day to talk with me. Let's start from your childhood. I want to kind of know, where did you grow up? How was it like?
All right. I grew up in central Nebraska, actually on a farm. Nebraska was, small town and farms basically all the time. Born in 1945.
1945, right around the World War II was ending, right?
Right. Well, I always said, I was right between the Bastille Day and the first atomic bomb test.
Right.
So not a very good time to be born. But in growing up, it was very interesting because it made Peace Corps very easy for me, and the fact that we didn't have electricity or water running in the house until I was about 9 years old. The latrine was out back behind, we call it the two-holer.
Right. Oh, it was not attached to the house. You had to go outside. Right. It makes sense. There was no water.
No water there and stuff like that. And so it was a fairly different time and that sort of stuff, and so it was very easy to go into the thing. And growing up, basically it was family and people living close by to you. I went to a country school, for kindergarten through 8th grade, all in probably one room or two at most.
Right.
And so 2 or 3 people in each grade, and you sort of listen to everybody else.
So like all the school was like maybe like 100 kids. That's about it. Like
in the school, there was probably not more than 20 or 25.
wow.
Yeah, so yeah, you had one young teacher, and and since I enjoyed learning, and while I had the other things, I basically had a good time reading books and that sort of stuff. And they ended up getting me a set of encyclopedias. People would go by and
Right.
sell books to families and that sort of stuff. And so my parents got a pair of bunch of encyclopedias, and one of the things they had in them was a thing called Lands and People, which had all the different countries of the world, and some pictures and all this other stuff. And so I used to take one of those out while I was herding cattle on the dairy cows in the ditches by the road, because summers, you'd have, if you had too many cows and you weren't getting enough rain, you'd had to go and might as well let them eat down the ditches,
Right.
and that sort of stuff. And so I read a lot and going, there's a big wild world out there. And was, when I went to high school, it was good enough to get a scholarship, and ended up, going into Lincoln at the University of Nebraska.
Oh, nice. University of Nebraska, Lincoln.
And, it took a little luring. My parents were saying, well, you've got an ad in Hastings. But I went, I think I want to go a little further than that. And so,
so when did you go to college? What year would it be? 1945?
I started in
65?
No, I started in 63.
63.
And I ended up, to make sure I didn't go to Hastings College, I ended up studying architecture.
Architecture, okay.
Which required 168 hours at that time.
Yeah.
More than master's degree.
Right. Yeah, like if you even add the master's, it's slightly more than that. Yep.
Right. And so I ended up doing that in 5 years. Of course, that was in the middle of the Vietnam War. And so it was one of those things that I went, I don't want to, I went back to the draft board, because they were saying, everybody who gets out of school in 67, 68, we'll draft them right away, and so I went to my draft board in Valley County, Nebraska, and I, said, I was wondering, what do you think about Peace Corps and stuff like that? And the people there says, we were wondering what we were going to do with you and a couple other people.
But like, instead of sending to draft, maybe there's any other option.
Yeah, and we looks like we're okay. So 2 years service would be 2 years service. And which was very lucky. I went, I said thank you and didn't look back, and ended up applying to Peace Corps. They were bouncing around for quite a while, trying to decide. I was thinking about, they had an architectural program in Morocco and Tunisia. They had I ended up in Ethiopia's province for a while and all this other stuff. but I had always figured that they would look at my state future farmer's degree more than they would look at my bachelor's of architecture. And all of a sudden I got a call of, how would you like to go to India? And which was very interesting because it was about the same time as I was debating about going to Chicago to protest the Democratic, thing. That because '68 also was when JFK got shot and Martin Luther King.
Oh man!
Yeah, and it turned out, I went to training in Hemet, California, where Nixon was even too liberal for them. They were all after the governor of Alabama, protests. So when Nixon got elected 2 weeks later, I was on a plane for India for 2 years.
So for your Peace Corps, you said you first went to Ethiopia and then Tunisia, or
they basically were looking for projects or programs that I would that I fit into and stuff like that. And India was at the time in '68. They didn't think that they were going to be able to feed themselves by '72. And so I was part of what they called the Green Revolution in India, where they went into irrigation, plant protection, hybrids, and mechanization more, and that sort of stuff. And so it was one of those things where I ended up with a group on the Tungabhadra project in Ballari Taluka district in northern Karnataka.
Northern Karnataka, okay.
Right. So I was almost equal distance between Hyderabad and Bangalore.
It was between Hyderabad and Bangalore, okay. And how long were you there for?
I was there for 2 years. Worked by myself in a village, which was a little interesting, since, we went to the Minister of Agriculture in Delhi, and, and they said, oh, you'll all be together in this. No, we're going to be, and he says, is it safe? And it was probably safer than any place else. It was, we sort of, in a lot of ways, felt like we were, agricultural experts, but part of it was snake oil salesmen too, because, we've got these Americans have come here to help and stuff like that. So we're not sure about their hybrids, but we'll give them a little plot of land of hybrids. And Indian farmers are like farmers anywhere.
Right.
They may not be able to read or write, but they can count. And so they knew the number of kaichilas or bags of rice that they got out of less of a lake or land versus what they get out of their own. And pretty soon, India went mainly hybrid within 5 years. It took Americans 25.
Wow.
So, so they did very well. In fact, at the end of the time, they were, we found some, they're talking about hybrid cotton in North and Gujarat area or something like that. So will you want to go to Gujarat and find the cotton for us? And I went, I don't know how I do that,
right?
Especially the language problems and all that.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, first thing I was gonna ask you, how did you deal with the language problem? I mean, British ruled India for a while, but a lot of people knew English, but not the farmers. I was thinking,
Not the
right?
farmers, yeah.
Right.
Well, they taught Canada here, so it was one of those things that we ended up with a 6-week training period in Hemet, and then 6 weeks in Raichur. And it was kind of interesting in the fact that I've always, said that, in Nepal and Nebraska have sort of an interesting bond, because of the fact that usually they, one of the first things is, oh, you're from, do you know? and that sort of thing. And so when I was in my training in there, I ended up hearing this guy saying, came in from USAID saying, anybody from Nebraska? And sure enough,
You're the only one.
I knew him. I had sent stuff to him. And you had people from New York or California and stuff like that. Never met anybody that, while I met 4 people from, from Nebraska that I had some contact with before or after, and I still have contact with them here now.
Nice.
And that sort of stuff. And so it's a very interesting, sideline that, farmers are probably a lot the same, or, from an agrarian background. There's a lot of, coalescing together, and working together. Yeah.
Another thing that I kind of curious was, were the people like approachable or hospitable, or were they thinking like, oh, Westerners, because India at that time might have, the democracy was what, they're 23 years old, right? Because they got independent around 1947, around that time, I think.
Stuff like that.
And then it was very early, and then you see these all American people, Western people moving in. Were the people like approachable, or they were like kind of, oh, who are these people? Why are they coming in? What was their mindset like?
Mostly, very much, they were approachable. There was a little bit of an undercurrent, but not much. India was in the process of finding its way. And I happened to be in Bangalore when the Beatles came, and to see Sai Baba.
During that, wow.
Back then, their first trip, and ended up knowing somebody at where they ended up staying. Because they didn't have much in the way of real first class hotels,
right?
And, they ended up staying at a university or something like that there, and all this other thing. So it was very approachable, especially if you tried to use the language and stuff like that too.
If you show them like, hey, you are trying to kind of learn their culture, learn their language, then they would be more hospitable.
Yeah, and it was sort of, it was kind of interesting, there, as I said, there seemed to be a sort of a competition among the village. I want to, we got the Peace Corps volunteer there, and that sort of stuff. And
Gotcha.
And of course, we ended up, making, raising the post office there an extra notch, because we were getting enough letters
in the mail. That makes sense.
From the United States, and from the world, that that they suddenly became a second instead of third class.
Right.
And so it was fun that way, and they were very, I've always kind of thought that the South Indians and the Nepalese are more akin to each other.
Mm-hmm.
There's, the Northerners. I get, you get some of them that know too much or think they know everything,
Right.
type thing. While there's an innocence and a interesting, thing of being, hey, we can learn from each other and that sort of stuff.
They were not like know-it-all kind of thing. They were like more of a like, hey, let's learn from each other, and there's something.
Yeah, and if we, even if we don't get it, we can have a good time.
Exactly. That's a good mindset to have anywhere you go, right?
Right, and so I've been very, finding the Nepalese here was, well, actually, I was here quite a while before there was a
Nepali community here.
We did have a few Indians, and I'd worked with UNL, because I could read a letter in Canada script if I had a whole day to play around to try to read it, because unfortunately, writing and that sort of stuff, they'd go and have somebody write it for them, and then getting it back, and probably not much more. Have you had your morning tea yet?
So when you were in India, what are the places kind of you traveled? Did you go to like Northern? Did you go to visit Nepal at the time at all?
I actually, India, I managed I've been back 8 times and stuff like that. But in my first time there, I did manage to visit quite a bit of India. I've been to, I'm trying to think, I had most of the states because, we went up to, I went up to Kashmir actually for one vacation. So I've been to Kashmir 2 or 3 times. And, now I'm not sure I was, but in fact, the rug over there is out of Kashmir.
So you kind of like travel all over India during
basically,
your time?
I've been to every area except the Assam, Nagaland.
Oh, like Assam, I want to say eastern, northern, and northeast.
Right, and Manipur area and that sort of stuff. But interestingly enough, with Manipur, I've had 3 people here stay with me.
So you kind of got to know them anyhow.
It's one was a lady who got a degree in medicine from Delhi. But, she also was good friends with the Nepalese there because she was considered as strange as the Nepalese by North Indians.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and so she ended up staying here for a while, and I hope she's still here. I haven't seen her in a while, but trying to keep track of everybody.
Nice, yeah. So before we move, leave India and come back to US. During that time when you were traveling back and forth, was that your kind of like first time going out of the United States? Was it India? And then next thing what I want to ask is like, what was the travel like back then? Would it take like 4 or 5 days to get there? What was it like if you want to?
Well, back in '68, there was, basically one flight a day each way from the United States around the world. And that would, so we ended up, leaving from Los Angeles, Hawaii, Japan, which I landed there on Pearl Harbor Day.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I ended up getting my first cassette ever, so we ended up having a cassette, battery operated, of course.
Right.
But I ended up getting electricity when I got there. Then Hong Kong, Bangkok, Delhi.
Wow. And then how long was that? 4 or 5 days? A week?
Basically, we would just stop for 2 or 3 hours.
2 or 3 hours. Okay.
Time, but still, it was 2 days at least.
Yeah, at least,
And with the time change.
With the time change and everything, probably another a day or two.
Day or so, yeah.
Yeah. Oh wow, traveling.
Yeah. And the other thing was, and even with when the Nepalese first got here in '91. Well, of course, I never even in over 2 years there. I never did try to call home.
I mean,
because it was, the Indian films used to do it. We did have one lady, one female Peace Corps volunteer, that her uncle was the first Jewish mayor of Atlanta, and she, and her mother was going to fly into Mumbai for 1970, so she decided before that to go to Mumbai, and we were all going to go up and see her and that sort of stuff. And but so she decided to call home and try to find out. And she had to go in from her village to Bangalore to book the call. And
to book the call, you had to go to another city.
And the operator there says, "All right, be at this phone, and between 2 and 4 or whatever." Which must have been about 2 or 4 in the morning. At night there. And we will make the call, and then when it goes through, we will call you so you can call. And so everybody was waiting around the phone at that time, and which was a couple days after. It took them a couple days, and most of the conversation was, "Hello, can you hear me?"
Hey, it is still like that, when you're talking overseas to my parents.
Yeah, it was all under underground cable and that sort of stuff, and so it was just
It was mainly through letters, sound like, right? Like calls once in a while if you get lucky.
Letters, and if you had to, you'd do a telegraph, and that was it. It was just no other way of doing it. But the letters were really pretty good, as I said. It took about a week to get a letter, and so I had 4 or 5 people all write you and stuff like that, and and as I said, changed the whole postal system.
Oh, definitely.
Upped it a bit, and that sort of stuff. But and even when the people first got here, it was $12 a minute.
Oh yeah, it was expensive. It was when I got here, like it was 2009. It was not as expensive as that, but it was like $3-4 or something like that.
Right? Yeah, we were so happy when we finally found a card that get us a minute to Nepal for $6.95.
That's almost a minimum wage during that time, right?
Right, I know.
It would take you an hour to just make that a call. So let's talk about so Peace Corps, you were there for like a couple of years, and then did you like move back to Nebraska? Let's talk about that. How did you get to Bellevue? Let's talk about that journey.
All right, what happened is I moved back to Nebraska, ended up going had a girlfriend who wrote me every day. It took me sometimes 2 days to read what she was writing because usually when she was asleep, half asleep, but and her penmanship was not real great. But and so we ended up, in fact, on the way home, I spent, that was one of the nice things. On the way home, we ended up doing, well, we got off in January or something like that. Just too late to be in Delhi for Independence Day, but we ended up packing our trunk, and they'd ship it home to us, and we were given a ticket, and we could have over. That was a nice thing about flights, and you could have overrides and all this other stuff.
Nice.
So I went. I did the thing of we took a train up from Bangalore to Delhi, then hopped a flight to Agra.
Okay, Agra. Oh,
Khajuraho. Banaras. Then I thought I was going to live and die in Banaras because the Pakistanis went and the plane that was supposed to pick us up from Banaras and take us to Bagdogra and to go up to Darjeeling, got hijacked, and they took it over to Lahore and blew it up or something like that, and Indian Airlines didn't have another plane.
Oh my God, they just had one plane.
Yeah, and they says, well, maybe 4 or 5 days, and we went, God, we're going to live and die, and we're supposed to be out of the country
right?
That time, and that sort of stuff. So we went to bed that way, and 6:30 the next morning, you knock on the door. Your plane is here.
Oh my God. Like, finally I'm getting out.
After we had slept, and went directly to Calcutta, and then up to Darjeeling. Had to switch that around, and then over to Burma or Myanmar.
Burma.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you could only stay 3 days in Myanmar at that time, and there it was the chat was official rate was 4.5 to the dollar or something like that, while the unofficial was 19 to the dollar. But I saw how big the rats were in Rangoon, and I decided not to want to see how big they were in the jail.
Oh my God.
Then over to Bangkok, and we were supposed to go up to. I had planned to go up to Angkor Wat in Cambodia. But unfortunately, the Khmer Rouge decided to party there, vacation there 3 weeks before I got there, so had to drop that. Went overland from there down through Penang and to Penang in Malaysia.
Malaysia.
And then rode DC, or Mercedes cabs all the way from Penang down to Singapore. Type things with stops at Ipoh and Kuala Lumpur and Malacca and that sort of stuff. And on the radio, got actually tired of listening to Bridge Over Troubled Waters by Simon and Garfunkel because it was all over
during
the Orient at that time. And I went, God, how am I doing? And so ended up in, as I said, in Singapore. And went to the raffles and watched the ollie fight in Manila.
Philippines.
And then after that, we went to after that, we went into Borneo, Sabah. Which Sabah is one of the Malaysian provinces near.
Gotcha.
And you've got Sarawak and Sabah, and ended up staying in the. I went, hey, after being in India, I hopefully. Got so much stuff built up that I won't be able to, I can eat off the streets any place.
Right.
And Sabah was amazing. And I had a great time there. And then left my friend, we were traveling together in Borneo. And he had long houses he wanted to see and everything else. And then up to Hong Kong and Macau, down back to Philippines, and Manila and Tagaytay, and then over to a quick stop in Taipei, and then Seoul, Korea, and then we did then I met my to-be future wife in Tokyo, and we toured Japan together for a while, except she freaked out after going, oh, I can speak English, and I went, this may lead to a few problems traveling, but
so this was right after you left India, right? Like,
right,
what are we talking about timeline wise? Was it a year, 2 year, going around all these places, or was it a few months?
A few months.
Months.
As I said, my parents said, oh, you miss Christmas, you will be in time for Valentine's Day. And my thought is, I've been in southern India. Come back to Nebraska in February is not
great idea.
Not
still cold here, right?
Yeah, in Darjeeling, we went to bed with all our clothes on, and underneath the covers it's still froze.
All right.
Ourselves. And so so it was one of those things that I got back late. I think April.
So like couple of 2 to 3 months, and then you guys just decided, let's just hop around like a day here, 2 here, and then just go around the places, right?
That sort of stuff. And we stopped in Hawaii and stuff like that. I had, I knew some people there and that sort of stuff, and so.
So it looks like you touched almost all South Asia,
right,
almost pretty much Southeast Asia, even the Pacific Islands like Japan, Korea.
So I got a pretty good start on doing that, and then later hit a lot of the other areas, and and been back and forth, quite often, because end up with, we got married after a few years of, sort of wandering around the States and maybe doing my 30th birthday, I decided I wanted to be in someplace strange. I was thinking about Peru, but that the UNL, UNO maybe dropped their thing to Peru, so we ended up with Spain, Portugal, and Morocco instead. And I was in Alhambra and
Uh-huh.
Cordoba for my birthday and so
Nice.
30th and that sort of stuff. And so,
Yeah, it looks like you were pretty well traveled during that time, where
and then, yeah, so it was one of those things. Then we went to and I started working a lot with the, as I said, ended up with some Indians down in Lincoln, especially those that can read Kannada and stuff like that. Ended up, meeting one from Bangalore who I probably did some work with another Peace Corps volunteer and drew up some plans for cages and stuff like that. And then next time we found that out when we were talking and we both knew the same guy. And
what is a small place?
He was getting his PhD in physics, and then he ended up working with my wife's sister for AT&T, and teaching the computers how to understand sound and and that sort of stuff. And so,
Nice. So now let's talk about, when did you join Bellevue University? When did you see international students started coming? Let's talk about, when did you see Nepali students started coming? Let's talk about that.
All right. Yeah, we had, basically, as I said, had started working out there, and I had a piece, I was a host family or something like that to a kid from Mysore City and all this other stuff. Down in Lincoln, then Omaha, we had the problems in 1974, I hosted Cambodians.
Wow.
And so, the 12-year-old became one of the first Oriental police officers in Omaha.
Wow, the person you hosted him.
Yeah, there was a 12-year-old
Nice.
as part of that. He was one of the first Oriental police officers. Then we had, in 80, you had the Afghans, with Russian.
Oh yeah, before U.S. was there, Russia was there for a while, right?
Yeah. And that sort of stuff. And I ended up with, and by that time I was working with UNO with a lot of their international students and that sort of stuff. And I had to keep one of the things that they weren't quite sure what they were doing either, and they had Gutierre there for Afghans, but I was working with the Afghans, and they ended up hiring this Cambodian military officer who wanted to order them what they needed to do, and and they were not. So I had to keep spent quite a bit of time trying to keep them from beating up the
right. Was he like a student advisor, international advisor?
He was supposedly the student.
Oh, okay.
Laurie's job there now. Laurie Arias.
Okay. I've heard about her.
Yeah. Well, and I worked with that, because they used to send, some of their people, and they sent one of them to India, and then the next year Laurie went down to Bolivia or something like that. And they had quite a bit of stuff with the Japanese, and we had a Japanese. And
so this is like around your early 1980s, mid 1980s.
Yeah, early.
You see a lot of international students coming from different part of the world,
and that sort of stuff.
But still, you haven't met any Nepali people during that time, right?
Back in about 82, 83, they had a thing. had a special program up at, actually a picnic to honor the first group, the first class up at Standing Bear Lake.
Standing Bear.
Up there when it just been opened. And I ran into this lady in Sari and, and asked her, what part of India are you from? And she says, I'm not from India, I'm from Nepal. And that's how I met Sarita Lahani.
So that was her name. So this is 82, 83, you were thinking?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, because my son, came in 81. We were also, and by that time we'd had a group here, and she may have been even late 70s.
Because she was probably like senior or something in college when you met her, or?
Well, what happened is, but Gutierrez apparently went to Nepal. And they were doing some, and she, he gave out a scholarship or something like that, and she decided to show up, and use it or something, that sort of stuff, and so I met her just as she came, but he came in 81, and she'd been here a year or so.
Okay.
Yeah, so as 78, 79.
Yeah, there is speculation there might be a person or two during that time.
Yeah,
here in around Omaha area.
Yeah, and she was actually the first one I had met.
You had met,
and her father, her oldest brother, was Prakash Chandra Lahani, who was very big man in the Punjab.
Oh, and Panchayat era? I might have to do some research on my end.
Yeah, actually,
I bet
he was treasury minister.
Say his name again, Prakash. What was his last name?
Lahani.
Oh yeah. I've heard of that. Yeah. So she was the sister of him. Okay.
Right.
Wow. And then so 82, 83, and then what year would be where you saw like, oh, it's more than one, more than two, like a lot of influx of people coming in from Nepal.
It was fairly not for a while. We ended up, the second one was Dr. Raj Bhandari, whose father was probably was also a dentist, and probably the dentist for the king. And they were traveling through here, and they stopped at the dental college at Creighton, because he had got his degree at Lahore.
In Pakistan?
Not Lahore. In what's the else one down in
India or Pakistan?
In India, yeah.
With Lucknow?
Lucknow. God, I always put those two together.
Yeah, that is like Lucknow. 8 hours away from my city where I am from.
Lucknow.
Yeah,
but when he was doing it, they still had the foot pedal. And so he decided he wanted to refresh his degree and stayed here, and so Bhandari got here, and we had another guy that was about it. And then I went back, in the middle 80s. My son and daughter were both here, but they were pretty young, and we didn't have hardly anyone there. But I took Vard Johnson, who was a very well-known in the state legislature and the unicameral here. back to India with me, on third, must have been 78 or something like that, a couple of years before I got my son. And stopped and talked to, no, it was after about 85 or 86. And we stopped and talked with the 88. We stopped and talked with the people at who actually stayed with the Lahanis on Ring Road.
Wow.
And that sort of stuff, because he'd been here once and that sort of stuff. And we were out at one of the places talking. They started talking politics, and and the food job was a one house thing and stuff like that. So I got home, and the next about 5 months later, I got this call from UNO saying, "How many Nepalese in town, and what are they? How do we get a hold of them?" And I says, "Well, what's going on?" And they says, "Well, we don't know for sure, but we just got a call from UNL, and they don't have any Nepalese down there." And I said, "Yeah, I know that." And who said they just got a call from Bierman, who was at that time was the county state attorney.
State attorney.
Yeah, stuff like that, saying that there were 6 Nepalese members of the Punjab and the ambassador in Washington, D.C., wanting to come to Nebraska because they wanted to study the unicameral. I says, "It's Bard's fault." and so we ended up with a lot of the ministers, Minister of Transportation. There was a Muslim guy there, and the kid that was the ambassador to the United States here, but Lahani didn't, show up with that. And of course, Sarita says, "Don't let Subedi get you alone because he'll ask about me." I went, "Oh, great." And sure enough, he did. The managed, I'll ride with you while the others can follow.
So this was like, there was a meeting or something, or here in Omaha?
Well, I had them all sitting eating biryani on this floor.
Oh, here, right here? Oh, wow. And this was like, you want to say late?
That'd be 78, I think.
78? Oh, wow.
Yeah, just before all of the Nepalese showed up, and because most of them, it'd be 80. Yeah, it'd been 80. Is it 86, 87?
Yeah, 86, 87, I'm thinking, because you made 81, 82, you said. Then it must have been right after that. Okay.
Yeah.
So you had all them sitting here eating biryani in this same place
stuff
here.
like that, and nice. Sarita had them over for dinner and all that other stuff. And, it was, but it was crazy because all of a sudden you had all of them. Of course, we ended up also, it's very interesting, because, with Lillian, I was in India the same time Lillian Carter was in Mumbai in Peace Corps too. And
she's Jimmy's Carter's wife, or
that was Jimmy Carter's mother.
Mother, yeah.
Yeah. She was in her 60s or so and stuff like that. And we ended up having while Indira went and was also from the place where I was. That was her precinct, even though she was a Kashmiri Brahmin. So we had the guy that succeeded her come here, fly in, and we had to find him. And he was out of Bombay and ultra, almost Jain, like, where he drank his own urine and all this other stuff,
Wow.
And we had to find, since our congressman had went to, Kavanaugh had went with Lillian for the Indian president's funeral. The president had to go to a farm here or a village, but he couldn't go to any place where they have any animals that might be killed, or even all this other stuff.
So this was when. Go ahead. So this was when you had to find him a spot around here, and they wouldn't go to anywhere that did anything with animals.
We ended up with a family that raised seeds for veg farmers.
Where was it, in Omaha or like surrounding villages?
Down south.
Down south.
Yeah,
oh wow.
Had a Peace Corps volunteer there that we knew. So,
and why were they like out of? This is I'm kind of curious. Why would he come to Omaha instead of going to like DC or something?
Well, he went to DC, but apparently when they went, when Lillian and everybody went for the funeral of the president, they went to a village to visit there.
Oh, so he wanted to do the same
he
here.
had to do the same protocol, but we had to
find the place where they did
find a place where we could get him his own yogurt.
Oh wow, interesting. All right, so let's go a little bit more to 90s.
All right, then we better move up to in 1990. Sue Rogers Gordon and I were good friends. She was she got back here, and turned out she had been Peace Corps in Truck Island first, and lived with some Catholic priests in a real remote area of Truck Island. And then on our way home, she stopped in India and Nepal, and fell in love with Nepal, so she went directly to the Peace Corps headquarters there and says, if you give me Nepal, I'll re-up for 2 more years. And so she taught high school in Kathmandu and lived in Dili Bazaar and taught at Kanya, which is a girls' school.
And this is like you're talking about like early 90s, late 80s? Late 80s, okay.
Yeah, actually it was probably medium 80s, something like that.
Okay.
And anyway, and she came back, and and the Peace Corps group here actually started the National Return Peace Corps Volunteer Group too, and so we knew each other and this sort of stuff. And so in 90, she started getting some people that, and she gave me a call of how would you like to keep a a couple of
Student here.
Nepalese or something like that, and that sort of stuff, because she was teaching English as a second language, and all of a sudden we had 4 Nepalese come here, and we found them houses and places to stay, and then we had one more come during the summer of '90, and then fall of '91 we had 9.
Oh wow! And
then all of a sudden we were up to 200 a semester almost. There was one semester where we graduated more Shrestras than we graduated Smiths or Jones or Browns. Yeah.
Well, what year would that be like?
That would have been in mid '90s.
Oh wow! It's a mid '90s. In one of the graduating class, there were more sisters than more Smiths.
Yeah, this was.
We're talking about. Let's talk about this.
This is all except there are 2 or 3. One was getting a chair, and by the time he came back, Mookie had shot them.
Oh, this is like, it says first international banquet.
Yeah, first international banquet in '91, I think. Fall of '91, probably November, I think.
You know what? I see one thing in this. They're all male here. I don't see any female.
Yeah, in this. That's one of the reasons I learned all the bad words.
Oh. All the guys who were teaching you.
Well, either that or they were using them all the time. And
there's roughly like 20 people in here.
And
this, it says international banquet, but it looks like it's all Nepali, right?
Yeah. We just decided, well, that was the first time we're
going to just name it international,
had them
right?
all, and and we had we had some Thai and stuff like that. Of course, we had the problem of, with Colorado, the Thai girls couldn't say they're ours. And so it became a very bad word.
Oh. So after that, and let's talk about, I guess, current time in 2000s. Looks like you've been really involved in a lot of Nepali community events here in.
Well, yeah. Well, as I said, for the '90s and all that, it was basically, Bellevue had, just tons of people from everywhere. And the word got around that it was one of the cheaper places. And,
definitely, it still is a cheaper place compared to a lot of places.
Best, correct. They used to say, and that sort of stuff. And I was doing some traveling with that, unfortunately, I was just, getting, wore down, I think, part of it, and just trying to keep track of everything. And finally ended up in 2004.
2004, that's when you retired?
Retired from there. And I did a little bit more work with with Creighton, the guy who used to head up the Creighton International Department, set up a program where he would, help. Well, of course, that was also when the Soviet Union was falling apart, and a lot of the plutocrats there, wanted to get their kids in
to the nicest school, right?
Nice, well, in an English-speaking school and that sort of stuff, and so even high school or
right,
and that sort of stuff. So he was representing a lot of them overseas, and I ended up leading one thing all through Europe, and ended up in St. Petersburg and Warsaw.
Oh wow!
Prague and Budapest and Vienna.
And this was during, well, what year are we talking? 2000s?
Yeah, that was after 2005.
Okay.
2006.
So Creighton did not have an international program before then?
They had a...
But it was not as big as Bellevue or...
He had left there with some of that and was setting up the program. And two of us just decided, it'd be kind of fun to do some traveling and not have sort of the pressure of trying to get everything,
right,
going together and stuff like that. And we'd had the problem of with the old first data. At one time, the Nepalese have quite a network of everybody, and and one year they had I usually end up finding out about everything afterwards.
Yeah. When it's all happened.
But they had the first data had 200 people and they were paying $8 an hour at that time, and so that was a pretty good price thing, and and so they had a raid on that, and
Well, when you say raid, you mean like the immigration raid kind of, and then you said 200 just international people or 200
Nepali.
Oh, just Nepali people.
They were coming in from all over. It's sort of like everybody.
Like in the summer or something, or actually they came to some other university and transferred here and started working.
Well, they were here for summer or something like that, and got jobs for summer. Like they like West used to hit for Estes, and and the others went to Ocean City.
Right, Ocean City. I went to Ocean City.
Yeah, I was there when they were something like 23 in one room.
Well, we didn't stay there. We were 6 in like 2 room or something. Oh wow! So when was the raid at that time?
It was in the 90s.
Did a lot of people get deported, or was it more of a like, hey, don't do it again?
Well, there were quite a few got deported. But a lot of there were a lot of just disappearances and stuff like that.
Right.
That was when I thought I had the Lost Boys. I ended up finding a couple of them. That they had just come in that semester or something like that, and then in the middle of the semester, all of a sudden this happened, and they just disappeared.
Oh wow!
And that sort of stuff, and it was really sort of hard on everything, and just trying to take care of that and all that. And and I was starting to have some problems with other stuff. So I did I worked for from 2006 to about 2062. All right. All right. Yeah. Yeah. I would. About 3 years or so there, and I did led some groups. I led a group through the Orient and that sort of stuff. We did India and Nepal, and that was that was when Chilwell was running something up there, and
Gotcha.
And that sort of stuff, and then did a couple high school things through Europe and all that sort of stuff. And
so now looking back at it, looking kind of hearing your story, what I kind of like got out of it is like, if it wasn't that Peace Corps, we would not be any involved in it. Let's say instead of going to Peace Corps, you got drafted, your whole story would have been completely different direction, right?
Yeah, it'd really be interesting, what happened. But as I said, I basically said, well, reading lines of people's while I was herding cows probably were more the thing of I go, hey, there's a wild world, interesting world out there, and a lot of interesting people, and interesting situations, and
right. Yeah, you would probably hear about it and not live through it. Like since you got in Peace Corps, we got to during that time. Went to India, went to all over the places, came back with your involvement in that international student community, and then you went to Europe, you went to South America. I mean, you're it's pretty much your life dedicated to that space of the.
Yeah, even after I got got sick in 2000 and about 7 or 8, that sort of stuff. I still ended up with people because the West we ended up with so I've been to Brazil and Argentina and Uruguay, and we I hit all 50 states with usually I had a white van, and we or it was one of those things that it was kind of fun. Would just Bellevue would go down to Colorado State because they had an international program or studies there, and so I would just load up a school van or maybe two and take a bunch of people there. And, places, we'd stay in a hostel or actually most of the Colorado State was amazing. They'd usually find people that would keep people for a few days while they for the thing, and you'd have various programs, and they'd get to see the mountains again, and and all this other stuff, and so.
Well, it looks like we're kind of like at our 1 hour mark. Last thing I kind of want to ask is there anything you want to kind of like, hey, say or talk about?
Well, all I can say is, I consider myself to be very lucky. I was able to, find some, find an area that I enjoyed doing, and had a lot of fun, with it. It's been a wonderful experience, and something that you could only dream about, being a innocent Nebraska farm
innocent
boy.
Nebraska farm boy, right? Nobody would have thought of like, a central Nebraska farm boy traveling the world, and then coming back, getting really involved in the international community here. And later on in the Nepali community, really getting involved. That's a really impactful story, and thank you today for sharing it.
Yeah, and I'm still involved in the fact that been working a lot with the Bhutanese group and stuff like that, and so I have a lot of them growing up now too. Since my grandkids are all have spent most of their lives either in Washington State or Florida. It's about as far as you can get.
Right.
I consider a lot of loners
Uh-huh.
with the Nepalese and the Bhutanese and stuff
Right.
like that, and so it's been very nice that way.
Well, thank you, Ron. Thank you for giving me your time today and talking about
All right.
going through your experience. Thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah, and if you get a chance, you may want to give Sue Rogers.
Sue Rogers. Okay.
Yeah, she lives just north of the West Roads.
Oh,
In
okay.
an apartment complex there, or she just moved. And unfortunately, her husband died of a brain aneurysm or something like that. Yeah, within a week. I didn't even find out about it until he was already gone.
Oh wow, that's unfortunate.
One of the other, Sanjay, they called up and says, "Why weren't you at the funeral?" And I went, "What funeral?"
Looks like you just tend to find out later on.
Right. So that was.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
And we've gotten together a little bit, but not nearly as much as. Yeah, she's done a good job. Interestingly enough, with the NN Society and stuff like that, probably one of the more interesting ones is you realize that the first two presidents of the NN Society were female.
I did not know that.
First one was Suchita Tamarkar. I now know the almost a caste system within the war.
Within the war, Sue, right?
Right. Then I found out that her family owns most of Bhaktapur or something.
Oh wow! She's a very wealthy Nepal.
Yeah, she's down in San Antonio.
San Antonio, around Texas. Oh.
And the second one was Sushma KC, who married a Manandar, and she's in Florida.
Northern Florida, southern?
Northern.
Jacksonville?
Jacksonville, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I can, get your
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you.
So.
Yeah.
But, it was kind of fun, with, planning them. And unfortunately, one of the other guys that committed suicide, he was one of the guys that went. They were going to climb Everest together. One of them actually did climb. We've had one, Rohit Sarastra, did climb Sagarmatha.
Oh, really? What year are we talking about?
About 7 or 8 years ago.
7 or 8 or so recently. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, he's got a daughter now who's probably going to be on the American ski team too.
Oh wow.
Yeah, she started skiing at 18 months.
Oh.